Okay, so I just want to yap about something for a little bit because I'm bored and I need to make content. So, Fortnite Chapter 7 is boring. At least that's what most people are saying right now. One of them being Nick A30. Fortnite viewership is down for streams and long-form content, but the player count is still healthy, so people like playing Fortnite but not watching it. Why? The formula has been the same for too long. After 8 years, people know what to expect from a typical BR match. There's just no reason for viewers to watch a full game except for a victory royale, in quotations, which isn't a story people care about as much anymore. Like in our creators, there needs to be more surprises throughout, finding rare loot, a potential betrayal from players, attempting to get successful extract. Fortnite needs an extraction mode. So it seems Nick here thought he had a bit of a eureka moment with the exclamation mark on the end of that, but my answer is no, Fortnite does not need an extraction mode. The first reason here is Fortnite does not need to be like every other game. It does not need to bandwagon off of the most popular thing right now, because at the end of the day, Fortnite may be just more of a platform nowadays, but it is its own game, so it needs to think of its own ideas. And, Nick, I think you might think of your own as well, because at the end of the day, Nick has almost 9 million subscribers, so I don't think Nick really needs to just, post whatever is going on, because at the end of the day, Nick has a YouTube channel and you are a content creator. Notice those two words, content creator. You're the one who makes the content, Nick, Fortnite doesn't make the content for you, which I kind of feel is what you're asking for, because, maybe just play our creators, but it seems these Fortnite YouTubers are just afraid to switch up on, their rhythm, their formula, because at the end of the day, what you're going to see from Nick A30 is probably new Fortnite season or the new Fortnite season is crazy, and he's going to tell you about a hiding spot, probably, and then just upload about the biggest update that they have that season. Really, all he's going to do is probably upload like 3 or 4 times for a season, and guaranteed over like 5-10 million views across them. Because if you think back to a season like Chapter 1, Season 2, that season got very stale very fast, which is really what I hope doesn't happen for Chapter 7. But yeah, when that got really stale, people had to think of their own, ideas, what they had to do to keep the game alive, because they were dedicated to that game. They knew that it had so much potential. But as it died down, you saw stuff like fashion shows, which is a whole genre on YouTube now. I don't favour it, but it's a whole genre. Yeah, I'm just looking at that image now. Oh my god, the titles. I went undercover, and undercover's like literally underlined and all that. Oh my god, bro, think of something else, bro. But yeah, basically, that does show that Fortnite creators are able to, show their own ideas and, make different full genres in the game that they played that got stale and eventually, became what it is today. But what I am noticing as, as the chapters go on, that just these Fortnite creators are just getting lazier and lazier and just relying on the game to make content for them, pretty much. Because we are seeing right now that streamers that used to play Fortnite, like Ninja, have moved on to other games, example, our creators, and are having fun on the game and realise you don't need to rely on Fortnite for content. I mean, Ninja's basically been abandoning Fortnite for like the past 2 years and just been playing different games, and it seems to be going quite well for him. But yeah, it seems that Nick just needs to maintain an image of, I'm a Fortnite YouTuber, I'm going to stay on Fortnite, stay on Team Fortnite. But I think they need to start thinking that Fortnite doesn't make the content for them, and they need to start innovating like what they did in Chapter 2 Season 1, go back to when they had to create fashion shows and do whole things inside the game, because, Nick does do stuff like that with the weapons, like the 100 players, but, as these uploads seem to have slowed down, one thing's definitely certain, that he's kind of just given up on making original content. And now I want to talk about how I'd like to not just put this on Fortnite, because in the day it's other people that make videos on the game's fault for not thinking of what they need to do to keep it alive and keep their channels alive without relying on Fortnite. And that's basically what other games have done, like Minecraft, Roblox, unfortunately. But it seems that Fortnite have also gotten kind of lazy too, relying on its players to do stuff to make their game alive as well. With the worst example thinking of, Steal the Brain Rot, and how that kind of took over Fortnite, unfortunately, and how, these events have kind of been popping off and the player base has kind of been moving on to more fan-made projects, and it seems, unfortunately, Fortnite Epic Games is promoting it, which is unfortunate because they need to think of their own games. Obviously, they put out seasons. I'm aware this takes time, but I just think them kind of showboating really lazy stuff as well, because still the brain rot isn't made with passion and care. They just can't. It is a copy of a Roblox game at the end of the day, complete and utter copy, just changing the second letter of the game name and adding the same stuff, and children get very addicted to it. So regarding the player base, the players also seem to be kind of bored, well, with what people have seen online, saying that the season's boring, the season's getting dry already, even though we're a month in, and I don't know if I fully agree with it. I mean, it's not really my cup of tea at the end of the day, the season, but I can appreciate its efforts for, trying things new. And not to mention, the people saying that, the game's getting boring, the game's getting stale, I mean, they're obviously playing it because the Fortnite player base has, being almost the highest that it's been in years, basically, ever since the event. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was like not the end event. It was like a chapter 6 one, chapter 5 one, and that was the peak of its player base, and it's almost reached it. But I think one of the reasons for Fortnite players feeling like kind of a drought in content in the game was the Winterfest, because honestly, it was probably one of the worst Winterfests that they've ever done, and the present stacking situation really got kind of ugly with the player base, because you couldn't claim a present that you hadn't claimed if you didn't claim it on the day that it was available. And on the side of the players, it's not in their heads that they thought that that was a drought. There truly wasn't too much to do for a little bit in that Winterfest session. Obviously, that was because the Fortnite devs were on their winter break, which is understandable, because at the end of the day, the devs are working very hard on the game and they need the break they deserve. But at the end of the day, there's still a player base there. And I'm not saying that Fortnite devs should, work in the holidays or whatever, because, it's their right to get holidays. But I think those times are probably the worst for Fortnite, and we've experienced those times before, so I feel like this is kind of a canon event, I guess you could say, with, winter and Fortnite, just before New Year's and a couple of days into January, like maybe like 5 days and 6 days into January, that just people don't feel like there's not much to do, so they kind of just say, the game's dying, the game's in a drought, and the game isn't dying, because it still maintains a great player base, like I've just mentioned, with the numbers being at almost an all-time high. So I think it's kind of just not a Mandela effect, I guess you could say. Not a Mandela effect. What am I on about, bro? I'm tripping. More of what Fortnite players feel, at this time of year. And not to mention, they've just added an update with the series South Park, which is actually kind of, surprising, because it's a very adult show. But I guess Fortnite really has, opened up the Pandora's box of variety when it comes to their collabs. I mean, they've added Tarantino movies, for crying out loud. And, this is great. This is great. I mean, it's great for everything that it could be, because it's adding more things into Fortnite. At the end of the day, collaborations are one of the keys to Fortnite's success. I know people were like, remember Fortnite before the collaborations. No one remembers that, because Fortnite always had collaborations, and we kind of got to accept that Fortnite isn't just going to be a purely, boots on the ground kind of, I'm not saying it's going to be like Battlefield, not like that, but more of like a former shell of itself, because Fortnite's always had the collabs, like I've said. And, that kind of makes Fortnite now. You can't really complain about that. Sorry, audio glitch about there. Sorry. But I feel like people just need to accept that, this illusion that, people think that Fortnite was a game that never had collabs. I mean, it always had the collabs. So I think people just need to accept that this is Fortnite. And coming back to this content drought, supposedly, I mean, when people say that, people get hyped for a new season, and the new season it's only been out for a month, and I feel like people kind of say that, the game is not got content, but people, again, have always said that, because, Fortnite has I can't really think of a time where Fortnite had a peak moment where they had so much content just clicking coming out. So it's kind of just more of the physical content that, you can buy. Not physical, but more like the smaller things. Not like the gameplay updates, but more or less, what's in the game that isn't necessarily a gameplay feature. But yeah, and again, that's always been Fortnite. Because when we had this, when we have these periods, which we've gone past now, where we have, late December to early January, that's kind of good for the game in a way if you think about it. It kind of gives players the opportunity to do things, and it seems that it's kind of become a bad thing in their player base now because, they can't really think of anything to do except rely on the game, the player base, and, Fortnite YouTubers like, I'm not going to call names, but Nick35 PK, probably the biggest offenders of this, kind of talk about how Fortnite's dying or Fortnite's running out of content. And I just like to mention, I'm a bit tired of these Fortnite's dying, because Fortnite is not dying. Fortnite is going to be around in the long haul at the end of the day. Fortnite is going to be here probably when you're a grandpa. Accept that. I'm sorry, you got to accept that. Anyways, that's all I've really got to say. Have a wonderful day, night, morning, whatever you're watching this at. Goodbye. Bye.